Hey there. This Mr. Hatfield did a wonderful job with explaining everything. This is just for those who need just a little bit more help, want to see another example, maybe want to see it in a different way than what he had done in his video, since I know he had already always oriented the triangles in the same way. So this is just a different way that you can do it. I'm going to be using two of the problems from your practice to show you how to do it the way that that I have shown them in as well. Like I said, Mr. Hatfield did a wonderful job. This is just, do we need a little bit extra help? Okay. All right. So with the right triangle similarity, Mr. Hatfield discussed how we have three triangles in there, and there's an altitude that is inside that right triangle that is not one of the sides of the triangle. And so we need to break these guys up into three triangles. And so the way that I have taught this to be done is I keep the smallest triangle oriented the way that it is. Okay, so the smallest triangle has that right angle at the top left. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that right triangle in, and I'm going to keep it that way. So that means the 36 is staying at the top, and then the X is staying here right there, just like that. Okay, so like I said, the reason I wanted to show this one is just to kind of really show you how to set up the triangles in a different way, okay? Because sometimes the hardest part about these problems is getting those triangles so everything's oriented the same way. Okay, so now I'm going to take the medium-sized triangle, and the way that I kind of emphasize this is I'm going to swivel it on this, around on this point here so that the right angle matches. So this is going to get pushed up. All right, so our medium-sized triangle, so I'm going to show it by doing a little bit bigger. When I push that up, this X value gets pushed to the top now, and the 64 goes along here like this, okay? All right, and so then finally I'm going to do my biggest triangle. I know that I have the right angle, so this is the hypotenuse. Regardless, the smallest side of the right triangle is always going to be attached to the smallest of the two triangles there. Anyways, so I got my biggest guy here, and what I want to notice is that 36 and 64 is 100, okay? All right, so now what I'm going to be doing is, if I have one variable or even if I have two variables, I'm going to find the similar variables. And so what I see here is that I have an X here and then I have an X here, so you only have that same variable. So as you can see, I'm using the smallest and the medium-sized triangle here. So this guy is not useful to us whatsoever, okay? So now that I see the triangles are oriented in the same position, I'm going to go ahead and set up a proportion. And so it'll be 36 over X. So you can think of it as, you know, this is in the corresponding position as that, so they're going to be proportional, equals, and then the other X down here is in corresponding position with the 64, and so it's going to be X over 64, okay? And so then from here, we're going to go ahead and find the geometric mean. That's essentially what you're doing here, and we're going to cross multiply. So 36 times 64, and then we have our X squared. We get 2,304. And so when we take the square root of that, we get 48. So we're going to take the square root of both sides, and it's a nice pretty number of 48. So there's no simplifying a radical in this one here. Now technically every time you take a square root it's positive and a negative, but negatives aren't going to work here because we're talking about length. Okay, so this is the answer to that problem. I'm going to show you one more where we have two variables in there as well. Okay? All right, so for this one here, I see I have an X and I have a Y. So once again, I'm going to go through and I'm going to draw the triangle so that it's oriented to where the smallest triangle is. So this one is the smallest triangle, so I'm going to have it where the right triangle is on the bottom right. Okay, this is just another way to do it. Again, remember, you don't have to do it this way. It's just to kind of help you out. Anyway, so the right angle is on the bottom right, so I know that the hypotenuse of that small triangle is 160, and then the little part there is 100. Okay, all right, so then from there I'm going to go ahead and draw the medium-sized triangle, and I want to swivel it so that the right angle is in the same spot. So what's going to happen is that this is going to swivel down. So that means the X is along here and the Y goes along the bottom. Oops, I forgot the Y. Here's our Y. Okay, all right, then last but not least, we're going to do our biggest triangle. Okay, so what ends up happening is the smallest side in all these ends up all on the bottom when we do it that way. And so when we, this is essentially going to get flipped down. And so the 160 is going to go down here. And then we have along the hypotenuse, we're going to have the sum of these two things. So this is going to be X plus 100. So sometimes you're going to have to add things together with that. All right. Okay, so taking a look at where I have some variables here, I see that I have an X here. Okay. But if I were to kind of look at that in another triangle, well, there's a Y in its same spot in the smallest one, and there's nothing here. So actually that one's not going to help us. So let's take a look at where the other one is. And so we have an x plus 100 in this position here in the hypotenuse. Well, the medium-sized triangle doesn't have a hypotenuse, but the smallest one does. So we know we're going to use that one. In the biggest triangle, the only other piece I have is this 160, so we're going to have to use that 100. Okay, so let's go ahead and set this up. We're going to have 100 over 160 equals 160 over x plus 100. So what you should see here is the geometric mean is not the x in this problem. It's actually the 160. So just kind of keep that in mind, is that the x does not have to be in there twice. It can only be in there once, okay? So we're going to go ahead and cross multiply. So 160 times 160, we get 25,600. And then we're going to distribute through with the x. So we get 100x plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 10,000. Okay? So then from there, we're going to solve for our x. Nice and easy here. When we subtract, I get 15,600 equals 100x. And then I'm going to divide both sides by that 100 there. Okay? So now I know what the value of x is. And that's going to be extremely helpful for when I'm going to do my next step. So I'm going to go ahead and erase everything that I have on there. If you have any questions, this is the time to hit the pause button and ask your teacher for the question. But I'm going to go ahead and erase all the work that I have down here at the bottom, okay? Okay, so I have a couple places that I can put this. Since I know what x is now, I can now replace this guy with the value of 156, which is going to be the most useful place for us to put that because we need to solve for y. And in that same triangle, I have the y. So what I need to know here is I'm looking for what the value of y is. I locate where the other y is, which is in the smallest triangle. So here we don't need to use the biggest one. Whoopsie, sorry. Here we don't need to use the biggest one. So we're focusing on the two little ones. Instead of using x, I'm going to use 156, okay? So I'm going to set up my proportions. So in this case, the y ends up being where the geometric mean is. So 100 over y equals y over, instead of x, we're going to use 156. So we're going to go ahead and cross multiply. So we have 100 times 156. Oops. So we end up with y squared equals 15,600. And so then from there, we're going to take the square root on both sides. Now with this, we don't have, it's not a perfect square. So if you want to go and try to take the square root of 15,600, you get about 124.8. Okay, so what that means is we're going to have to find the perfect square that goes into this. So for this specific situation, when I have 15,600, we want to identify the biggest perfect square. In this case, it's going to be the number 400. Okay, so we're going to play with that. 15,600 is 400 times 39. So 400 is our perfect square. 39 obviously is not a perfect square. That's 3 times 13. So we can't do anything with that. And so we're going to separate those two things. Okay, so I have 400 and square root of 39. And then I can take the square root of 400 to be 20. And then I'm left with the square root of 39. And so this is the value of y. So our two answers here, x is 156 and y is 20 square root of 39. Okay, so hopefully that was kind of a little bit more helpful for you as well if you're still struggling with this topic. If you still need some extra help with that, please let your teacher know and we can walk through another problem with you. But this is just a different way to show you how to set up your 3 triangles. But again, let us know if you have any issues. Have a great one.